Let me ask you a question. How's your work-life balance going? Are you able to separate and compartmentalize so that you can enjoy your friends and family without worrying about your work? Or perhaps you're not able to get your work done because you're struggling in your personal life. Find out now by taking my brand new quiz. It's called How's Your Work Life Balance? Find it at lisamustard.com/quiz. And in just a few questions, you'll find out where you stand. Plus, you'll get my best advice and tips on how to balance it all better. That's lisamustard.com/quiz. Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. I hope you're doing well. Before I dive into this week's episode, I want to say thank you to everyone who listened to my last episode on how to cope with a midlife crisis. And so many of you sent me an email or a DM to say thanks. And I knew I wasn't alone in going through what I went through. And many of you reached out and said you could totally relate and expressed your gratitude for that episode. And some of you even shared it with your friends and family, which is such an incredible compliment when you share the podcast with others. So just thank you so much. That's the best feeling for me. And if you're wondering what episode I'm talking about, it's the episode prior to this one, and it's only 8 minutes long. And in it, I share a little bit about my midlife crisis and how I moved through it. So you can go back and listen to it maybe after you listen to this one, but I'll put the link in the show notes so you guys can go ahead and listen to that one after this. So life really is such a journey, and I am so excited for you to meet today's guest. We met at a local therapist get together about 2 weeks ago, I think, and yeah, about 2 weeks ago, and we instantly connected. Jenny Jansen definitely entered my life right when I needed her to. So crazy how that works, right? She is friendly, warm, energetic, compassionate, curious, all the things that make a great therapist and coach in my book. Jenny is a licensed social worker and master coach of the adult chair. And in this episode, she shares about her journey and how she made the leap from state mental health agency employee to opening up her own private practice, plus so much more. Okay, one more thing before we jump into this episode. Whatever platform you're listening to this episode on, can you do me a quick favor and head over to that platform and give me a 5-star rating? That helps get the show out to more earbuds, and I truly appreciate it if you took about 20 seconds to do just that. So thank you all so much. All right, here's my conversation with Jenny. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of The Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and this week's guest is Jenny Jansen. Welcome to the show, Jenny. It's awesome to have you.
Thanks, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about our conversation.
Me too. I think it's fun how you and I just met. Was that last Friday? And here we are.
Yeah, like not even a week ago.
Yeah. So let's tell that story. Let's just from your perspective, how are you getting ready for that? Because what we did was we met at a therapist meetup here in Columbia, South Carolina, and you hadn't been to one yet.
So, no, I hadn't.
So what was it like for you to do all that?
It was really cool. I think, I have my own practice and I work virtually at home, by myself. And so I was like, I really need to get out of my house. I really need to meet some more people. And, we're part of this Facebook group and community. And, the coffee shop that we met at was right around the block from my house. And I was trying to talk myself out of it. I'm like, gosh, it's 7:00 in the morning on a Friday. I'm like, ugh. I'm like, I've got to just be intentional. Like, just go. Right. You never know what's going to happen. It's an, hour or two of your life, and just see what happens. And it was probably one of the most enriching conversations that I'd had in a really long time. Just getting out there and, meeting you and our other colleague and whatever we would call him.
Eric. Yeah. Colleague.
Yeah. Other professional, and just being able to talk about what we do and, see how a lot of our values and our mission and our, everything crosses over. Like we're all out for the same thing. And it felt like it was divine.
Yeah, I know. You're right. And I feel, that was my second one that I had been to. And the first one I went to was closer to me. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can make 7. Or 7:30. Like I can wrap my brain around that. Well, this one was about I don't know, it took me about 25 minutes to get out there. And I had the same thing. I was like, I told Eric I'd be there. Eric is my friend. I want to support him. And I had to be very intentional about getting out the door that morning because it's easy for me just to stay in mom mode and like, see him out the door. But I was like, no, I'm going. This is time for me to connect with some like-minded colleagues. I am definitely going. And you're right. It did feel divine. And I don't know, I feel like I'm not a very woo-woo-y, mystical-y kind of person. So I'm so glad that I met you because you definitely have that spark and you bring it out in me. So thank you for
Oh,
coming
thank
that
you.
day. I do believe it was divine. I definitely agree with you. So if you guys out there listening are considering a therapist meetup, just a regular or irregular, however you want to do it, coffee meetup with local therapists, oh, it's so great, especially post COVID world. It's just nice to get out again and be around other therapists and
Mm-hmm.
exchange ideas and have coffee together. And both times I've come away with some incredible ideas and relationships. So I'm so glad we're
Yeah,
here.
I know. It still makes me laugh that you were like, she's wearing a flowy outfit. She's got to be a therapist.
Yes, it's so funny. I didn't mean to scream into the mic, but I have to laugh because I remember years ago when I first, entered the world of therapy, I had this cardigan that I would wear when I was going to work. And it was just because it was kind of breezy in the office, but it was long and flowy. And my husband was like, "Oh, you're a therapist today. You have your cardigan on." And it was like the cloak of therapy. And so when I saw you walk in, I was like, that girl has got to be a therapist because that is one flowy cardigan. And you are. So it's true. It's true. There's a
Yes.
stereotype, and we both,
I mean, I'm wearing one today.
yeah,
I just,
wholeheartedly embrace it. So
absolutely.
yeah. So if you're out and
It's
about and you
part of
see,
owning yourself.
definitely, definitely. Well, and then when you and I started talking and you shared about what it is that you do, I was just so intrigued. So can you tell our listeners like about your practice, about how you help people? I mean, I can listen to it all over again. I'm fascinated by what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So my background, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, licensed independent social worker of clinical practice. And then, so I worked at the Department of Mental Health for, my beginning stages of my career. And, I've always been a seeker. I've always wanted to know more and do more self-work and more, personal growth. I mean, I subscribe to therapy. I'm in therapy. I feel like everyone needs therapy. But I came across this podcast. I guess it's been almost 3 years ago. Oh my gosh. And it was the weirdest thing. It's like I was part of another group and then they recommended this podcast. So I started listening to this podcast and I was like, this is the real deal. This is the sweet stuff, like the golden ticket. And I was always looking for things that were like, okay, this is the thing that's going to fix me. This is the thing that's going to make sense. And it finally was. It didn't fix me because I don't believe that people are broken and we don't need fixing, but it just broke down the elements of self-care, the elements of what it means to live as a healthy human in such palatable ways that I was like, started using it with my clients and joined the membership of this podcast. And it just evolved from there. And, long story short, I went to a workshop. She had a 3-day workshop that year and it was during COVID. So I was like,
Right.
didn't know if it was going to happen, but divine timing, of course. And she happened to be starting a coaching certification. And so I joined the coaching certification and then that ended. And I'm like, okay, but there's got to be more. And so she came out with a master coaching certification. So I joined the master coaching certification and it just evolved in a way. So now, here I am and I've got this myriad of tools that I've learned both as a clinical therapist. I have a background, I've been intensively trained in things like DBT and mindfulness and ran groups. But now I also have this other incredible toolbox of things like the non-traditional ways, like energy medicine and what it means to do inner child work and somatic work and really get to know those deeper parts of ourselves. Cause that's to me where all the magic is.
Yeah, definitely. So you can share the name of it, right? Like you can.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah. So
absolutely.
tell
Yeah.
us the name of it.
Okay, yeah, of course. It's called the Adult Chair.
Mhm.
And it was created by a woman named Michelle Chalfant. And she is now she's based out of Charlotte. She was out of Nashville when she created this. But the model is basically a manual to live in the healthiest version of yourself. And what she does is she breaks down our stages of development into 3 distinct chairs. So we start with the child chair, which is ages 0 to 6. So what that means, during the child chair phase, we are very pure, we're innocent. You think about a baby just being born. They're just these beautiful beings of light. They're just curious about the world. They cry when they want to, they laugh when they want to, and they don't really care about what anybody thinks. If they want to throw spaghetti in the restaurant, they're going to throw spaghetti in the restaurant.
Right.
They're very, like I said, curious, very innocent, very vulnerable, very playful. That's where our creativity is born, finger painting in preschool and things like that. But it's also during this phase of life that we just absorb everything in the world around us. We're like little sponges. We're like, ooh, okay, that's what works in this situation. This is who I have to be. And you don't really do anything with it at that point. You just kind of record and everything gets dropped into the unconscious mind. And so around the age of 7 is when our ego starts developing. And you think around like 2nd and 3rd grade or something, we're trying to like see where we fit in the world. Right. So this is where we start to develop masks in order to fit in with the world around us. It's like, okay, so when I'm at school, I need to be the class clown because that's the only way that I get attention. But when I'm at home and, maybe dad's an alcoholic or there's, chaos going on at home, I don't need to be the class clown because that's what gets me in trouble.
Right.
So we learn how to navigate the world and we may become, codependent. We may develop addictions because we're trying to numb out those true emotions and true needs of that inner child. And so the adolescent chair comes and basically throws a blanket over the inner child. And it's like, I don't got time for you. My job is to keep you alive, safe, and acceptable to the world. So I'm going to do whatever that takes. It's in the adolescent chair that we also live in story and assumption. We might pretend like, oh, that person hates me. And we live in this world of trying to navigate where we fit.
Right.
And it can change relationship to relationship. So we also live in past and future. A lot of anxiety and depression develops around this time, and we just not very conscious. And then around the age that stage of development is from age 7 to 24. So that's pre-adolescence, adolescence, and post-adolescence. And when we're about 25, biologically speaking, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed. And so we have the ability physiologically to make more executive decisions. And if we had healthy models growing up teaching us all of these tools of how to, live healthy, we just slide seamlessly into what she calls the adult chair. Now, the adult chair is the seat of consciousness. We're very aware. We slow down. We live in fact and truth instead of that story and assumption. We're responsive. We respond rather than react. And it's here that we have boundaries. We can feel our emotions without getting enmeshed with them and communicate our needs. We know what our needs even are in the first place. It's just the seat of the healthiest version of yourself. But many of us, when I said biologically speaking, I was listening to a podcast, I think it was Glennon Doyle's, and somebody said something about treating people like 8-year-olds. I can't remember who it was, but it's like, because we're all just wearing adult suits.
Yeah.
But we also have these inner children inside of us. But biologically speaking, we may look like adults, but we're still operating from a lot of the defense mechanisms of the adolescent chair. And so what this model does is it teaches the tools to live in the healthiest version of yourself. So how to stay in your adult chair more consistently and
cool.
As it relates to relationships and how you operate in the world.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like, sign me up for the next workshop. It sounds awesome.
It's coming up.
Yeah, I know. You keep reminding me. The next one is, you said in Nashville, right?
Yeah. In November.
And then she rotates between Nashville and Charleston. Is that right?
Well, she lives in Charlotte, but the workshop is in Nashville. The last one was in Charleston.
Okay.
She's revamping her program. I haven't been made privy to the upcoming changes yet, but
right.
She's shared that she's changing some of the things for 2023, and I'm really excited.
Yeah. Okay, cool. definitely have to. I started to listen to your episode on her podcast about the inner
Mm-hmm.
critic, and I thought that was fabulous. Do
Thank
you
you.
feel like you have a certain niche or specialty area? Like, what do you really feel is like your zone of excellence or genius?
I feel most alive. Many people say like, oh, I have work today, or I had this many clients and I'm so drained. It's like, I feel so energized doing the work that I do. I could have like 6, 7 clients and I'm like, all right, let's, get my dog, let's go for a walk.
Right.
And it's, I just feel so good about it. I think if I had to choose a favorite, it's the people that don't know who they are.
Mm.
My favorite thing to do is to help people discover who they were before the world told them who to be. Before that conditioning, before that, the masks started coming up, and I pick apart and dissect like, okay, how did I get here? But that's not the true me. It's like, what's actually in my heart? Because the ego, Michelle coins it as chin up. So we're living in our heads where we're spinning, we're not grounded. So I love helping people to get down into their bodies. Because you think about it, our bodies have so much wisdom. I mean, they tell us when to eat, they tell us when we're tired and need sleep. But that's the physical needs, but we don't tune into the emotional needs. And the body gives us so many signals about our emotional needs as well that we don't pay attention to. We're not taught to pay attention to them.
Right.
Like, is my heart opening or closing when I think about, going to this coffee meetup? It's like, well, waking up at, 6:30 in the morning makes my heart close, but being there makes my heart open.
Right. Yeah.
But it's learning the tools to tune in and the awarenesses that we have built inside of us already, and helping people to access those more consistently.
Gotcha. Okay. So that could be really anybody.
I mean, it can. And I know, like, they say you got to like hone in on a niche, but I think I love like people that are ready to do the work, people that have, codependency. I work a lot with codependency because that's the addiction to other.
Right.
And so it's like, who are you without this relationship?
Right.
And how can you start to live more authentically from the truest version of you?
Yeah. I'd have to say that's probably one of my favorite issues or themes to work with also. Maybe, yeah, probably because I've been there as a codependent in the past and kind of like, worked through a lot of that stuff. And you live more, like you were saying, authentically and congruently knowing who I am. So I love that population too.
And it's not even necessarily just an addiction. Like if you're in a romantic relationship or a friendship, it's what does everybody else expect of me?
Right. Yeah.
Instead of starting with what do I expect from myself and what do, we go outside of ourselves so often. And it's so hard nowadays with social media and, comparisons and everything that makes us feel like we're not enough. And getting to know the parts of us, like you might have an abandoned part of you inside that, that inner child part that was covered up by the adolescent chair because you were too much, or your fun and creativity wasn't met with compassion.
Yeah. Oh,
and mirroring to people like, no, this is what I see. Like, this is the truth. What you're telling me is this, but you are important. You are worthy because you exist.
Yeah.
And starting with that building back up of self, in order to, just live wholeheartedly, to quote Brene Brown, she's like my jam. She's the one that really got me started on the journey of getting into social work and therapy and learning about vulnerability and things like that. But I'd say I want to be the love child of Brene Brown, Glennon Doyle, and Michelle Chalfant. Like if they could all just have like a love baby.
Right. That would be you.
Like, that would be me.
Well, I think you're doing it. So
thank you.
It's happening. I mean, really, because I definitely, I don't know as much about Glennon Doyle as I do about Brene. And just by knowing a little bit more about Michelle, I mean, it seems like you're definitely bringing it all together. And that's fascinating. And, as you were talking, a lot of, as therapists, I once had somebody tell me this, like, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like one therapist always said that. And at one point when I heard that, it kind of made me a little sad, but then now that I'm older and I've been doing this work for some time, it's like, she's totally right. So much of what we do as therapists is help people revisit their parts or their pieces of them that are traumatized or have some meaning making experience that took them off in a direction of unhealthy coping or, just survival skills.
Mm-hmm.
And they hit a bottom of some sort, and that's different for everybody. And then they decide that they want to feel different. They want to feel better. And a lot of what we do is just we help them just process the stuff. I've been reading. Did you ever read the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So the kind of anyway, that's a lot of what we're talking about kind of reminds me a little bit of him. And then also, I don't know, Gabor Mate, the psychiatrist. Yes. Okay. So he has a new book out and I don't have it yet, but he's been on Tim Ferriss this week and Joe Rogan.
I know. I have them in my queue.
So I started listening to the one with Joe Rogan, and it's really good. And he's talking about, trauma when we're children and how you call the child chair is how when we're in that chair, we absorb everything. And he's referring to when he was an infant, his mother gave birth to him during World War II. Wow. And they're Jewish. And anyway, it's just fascinating. And he talks about he didn't even know he had trauma from that until he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating to me.
And that's why the child chair is 0 to 6, because in utero, you think about, were you wanted?
Right.
Was there abuse in the home? Were you loved and nurtured and sung to when you were in the belly, or were you not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so was there, drinking or smoking while you were in the belly? So there's so many things that even happen in utero.
Right.
That, I mean, it's this whole model, and it's so simple. The concepts are so simple. I'm not saying it's easy to do the work, because it's not.
Right.
But the concepts, her tagline, or I don't know what you want to call it, is simple psychology meets grounded spirituality. And so that's what her thing is she breaks things down so simply. And I think that's what drew me to it and drew me to want to learn more so that I can help others in the same way. Because it doesn't have to be complicated. Right. We could do inner child work and do a 15, 20 minute, visualization, and then come out and we're like, okay, so what's next on the list? Because it doesn't have to be this, I'm going to go back and do all my deepest, darkest things. It's very gentle. Mm-hmm. And I always say, I'm right there with you. Right. I am I have them imagine me there with them, because it's so scary to do this stuff by yourself. And so knowing and having that relationship with the client and saying no, I'm right. I've got you. Yeah. I know this stuff like the back of my hand. I'm not going to let you fall. Yeah. Yeah. So it's, and that creates a sense of safety, and that doesn't have to be even an inner child trauma. It could be I've got this really mean inner critic, like you were talking about earlier. It's let's get to know this part. What does it actually want from you? What does it need from you? What does it think it's doing? Right. It's just so fascinating, and it's so creative. So I get to, bring my inner child out a little bit and say where are we going to go next? Let's just go with this.
Do you need continuing education contact hours? If so, then be sure to check out my pod courses. Currently, there are 9 to choose from, and there are a variety of topics. Learn more about eating disorders, addiction treatment, Lyme disease and mental health, how to be an adoption resource, plus more. And I have new pod courses coming out this fall. And I'm giving you your first one for free. So head to my site and sign up for a free pod course. I'll email you a code that you can enter at checkout to get your first course at no charge. So you can listen anytime, anywhere, and when you're ready, purchase the course, take the self-study quiz, pass it, and then download your certificate of completion. It's simple, yet if you have any questions or need support, feel free to get in touch with me. And Mustard Consulting LLC is a NVCC approved provider. Yeah, I think that's so cool. I love it. Just fascinated by it. And let's back up a little bit, because you shared with me at the meetup, how you left your job and the leap of faith you took. And I think a lot of folks out there need to hear your story, because it's so inspiring. It inspired me, right? I left that day and I'm I'm doing it. I'm doing it, Jenny. You have inspired me to, finally take that leap of faith. So can you talk a little bit about or share that story? Because I think it's awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let me just put a little caveat. I never imagined that I would be a business owner ever, or that I would be a life coach, or that I would be, I was I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to get my license. I'm going to get all the trainings. I did intensive DBT. I was looking into, EMDR and other things. And not that any of those tools are, I mean, I use DBT still, like this, the skills are just life skills for me. But I think it was the knowing that there was something more out there. And like I said, I've always been a learner. I've always been wanting to know more. So I was working for Department of Mental Health at the time. I did the DBT program and then moved over to the young adult program for a few years. And it was while I was at the young adult program that I started listening to the adult chair. And it happened so fast, but it didn't feel pressured. It's like, I learned about the podcast. I joined the membership. I went to the workshop. I signed up for coaching. It felt so organic and so necessary. Michelle talks about the illuminated path. It's like, you don't know necessarily what's all the way out there. You have a direction, but you just wait for the next step. And then you trust, you tune into that heart space. Like, am I open or closed? And it's like every time a new opportunity came up with the adult chair, my heart just was like, oh, okay, like here we are, I'm ready for it. And so, I went through the coaching certification while I was working at Department of Mental Health. It's a 6-month program. And so I did my practicum hours. I did all the learnings. There's mentoring and live teaching. She teaches you the tools. And I graduated from that certification in April of 2021. And with that certification, they basically build your website. They teach you how to get a business license. They teach, they kind of walk you through, you leave with a business with all the tools that you need to create a business. And so I was like, well, if I'm getting this as part of my certification, then why not use it? Because for a while, what I was doing was, seeing clients in the evenings and on weekends, because I was working, 8:30 to 5. And then getting home, I would have a 6 o'clock and sometimes even a 7 o'clock, and then work some on Saturdays. But it wasn't feasible for me to continue that lifestyle. And so I finally just had to say, I'm going to just trust this and I'm going to go with it. And, I could always get a job somewhere else. I still have my license. I still keep that up. And so, but I was like, I would hate not trying. I would hate to look back on my life and feel like I didn't at least give this a shot. I didn't put my all into something. And so it was last June, like as soon as I graduated with my official coaching certification, I put in like a 6-week notice. And I left the beginning of June of 2021, and, slow going for a little bit, started out with like 5, 6, 7 clients a week. And, the ones that I was seeing at night and on the weekends, I would move. But now it's been almost a year and a half, or a year and a few months. And it is incredible. I work a third to half of the time and make a lot more. I work from home, so I have flexibility in my day, to record podcasts like this, or to do, go to the grocery store, fold laundry, or do what I want to do. And, but it's like that leap of faith, just like I had to, like, it was that heart knowing that I talk about. It's like, I knew I had to give it a chance. I was like, I could always go back if I flop. Okay. But I had the support of the adult chair team, and they're like, you're not going to flop, because like I say with my clients, they're like, we're right here. Like, we want you to succeed. And so I had them in my corner. I had my cohort in my corner. There was 26 of us in the first class, and I think 40 something in the second class. And then in the master coaching program, there was 9 of us. So there's only 9 of us in the world that are at that level. However, it's like, anytime I felt like I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, this is the worst. Like, I always have somebody that I can call on that is going to be in their adult chair for me. I'm like, I will call my friends that I need an adult right now because my adolescent is spinning out. Right. It's like, I'm in all the stories and assumptions. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to fail. I did this. And, oh my gosh, I don't have as busy of a week this week as I did last week. Am I doing something wrong? And they're like, Jenny, like, put your feet on the floor. Like, because I love connecting with people that speak the language. Like meeting up with therapists, it's like we just have a different language, and you can go deeper faster, like you and I did.
Yeah.
And, because even after Eric left, we would stay for another 45 minutes at least. But the journey is just It's the trust in yourself. I think that's what it was, trust in the program too, and trust in my knowledge, but it was trust in myself that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. Of course I had, built up savings, and I did the practical things that I needed to do in order to make that leap, and make that transition. But I mean, I think it took me like 6 weeks or so to build up my clients and match what I was making at Department of Mental Health.
Wow.
You 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then it just kept growing from there.
Yeah.
And so, and it's not about the money. The money, I'm just like, oh, wow. Okay. Like, to me, it's like, but that's just a measure that a lot of people use, because so many people that want to make this transition, like, oh my God, but I have bills and I have responsibilities. And so you plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
You have 6 months of savings. Like, if I didn't see any clients for 6 months, I still would be okay.
Yeah.
And then you trust,
mm-hmm.
And you put yourself out there and you make connections, and it's word of mouth. That's how I've grown, really, is through word of mouth. I haven't really done a lot of marketing, but because when you bring your true self, people are like, oh my gosh, my friend needs to see you.
Right.
Or, will you see my kid? They really need to learn these tools now before they get to be 50 in my age and trying to find their adult, so it just happens organically. Yeah. And when you trust the process, that has been a huge, huge struggle and necessity.
Mm-hmm.
It's both.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me. Just hearing you share your story again, my heart is like wide open. I'm like, I'm so ready. Like, it's happening. It's happening. And if you guys heard me kind of give a little giggle when she said I'm almost 50, because I'm almost 50, I'll be 50 next year. And I'm like, yes, that's me. Like, I mean, I feel like I'm more in my adult chair than I was, at 40, but it's still there. Like, my adolescent chair still sneaks in and gives me that, like, the imposter syndrome or boundary issues, or, you don't have permission. And it's like, oh, no. Like, I'm going to sit in my adult chair and I'm not going to listen to that voice, because I have enough experiences under my belt in my adult chair to prove those voices to, simmer down. So, like, as you're talking, I'm of course over here processing my own stuff. But
that's what we do.
That's what we do. Like you said, when we get together, it's like deeper, faster. And it's like that. It was like, boom, we were right there.
Yeah.
I think I was crying within like 5 minutes of talking to you. And then I think you kind of shed some tears at some point too. So if you go meet your therapist friends, it's so
enriching.
It really
was. It was to me, it felt like it was just like we'd known each other for a long time. And I know that sounds really like weird, but also not. No. But I do want to say one more thing about the chairs, because we're not going to be in our adult chair 100% of the time. And when you're in your adult chair, it's not always then. We're not sitting here with our, singing bowls and meditation music. It's about the awareness. It's like we become the observer of everything around us, like mindfulness. Yeah. It's really based in mindfulness of like, okay, what chair am I in? And then it's like, okay, so now what are the tools I need to get back into my adult? Mm-hmm. Like, you can be angry from your adult chair. You can be very angry, be very angry even. But when it turns into rage, that's unhealthy coping, and that's the adolescent. So it's not about the emotion. We want to feel all of our emotions, the anger, the sadness, the shame, the joy, the love. But it's, what do we do with those emotions? And that's where in the adult chair we pause. And there's that space between what am I feeling and how do I want to respond? Mm-hmm. Instead of being very impulsive in the adolescent and saying like, I feel this and somebody cut me off, so I'm going to flip them off and honk my horn. And it's like, is that really effective? And is that really who I want to be at my heart? So and then think about, I think about my dog is my heart. And sometimes when I have music on, we'll have a dance party and she jumps up and we're dancing and stuff. That's my inner child coming out. And so it doesn't matter how old you are. And that's why I love also working with teenagers. They don't have a prefrontal cortex yet, but they have the knowledge of what it means to be healthy. They've made healthy decisions. And so we just channel, it's an energy. Right. We channel those parts, and it's just the adult is aware and makes choices. I could talk about this forever. I know. I feel like I'm saying a lot of things, and
no, I think it's all, it all makes sense the way you're sharing it. It to me, I could listen forever and like sign me up. Like, let's do it. I want to do this too. Yeah. So I just think your story is just amazing and so inspiring. And just, I know it's selfish. It's what I needed to hear last Friday when we met. And I think a lot of people out there, who listen to my show need to hear this. Cause like you said, we get stuck in our, this is what I do. This is how many clients I need to see. And some of us get really burnt out with, that I don't know, the grind of it.
Yeah, I know I was. I mean, progress notes and doing, all of the extra stuff, that it takes. And I mean, the burnout's real.
Yeah. And especially for people who work for an agency or who work in a setting where it's about a lot of numbers and you have to, you have to see so many people. I think that's where the burnout can happen for me, is when there's this is your quota and these are the hours that you have to work. And it's like, ugh.
If I heard the word productivity one more time, I was like,
right.
Get off me.
Yeah.
It's not about it's about being with people, and meeting people where they are and saying, all right, let's do this, and even if you mess up, it's like, cool, there's another trigger. There's another part. What got in the way? What blocked you from accessing your adult? And I mean, I do this personally all the time. I'm like, wow, that was an adolescent move. It's like, we're not meant to just be Zen all the time. Like I said, but it's about the awareness and the decision to choose differently.
Yeah. 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 And I'm thinking about personally, like when you said it's not Zen and mindfulness all the time. No, it's not, especially when you have a teenage girl in your home and you're like, oh,
bless.
Yes. But it's like you said, it's being aware. And sometimes I lose my cool and my husband's like, whoa, what just happened there? And I'm like, oh yeah, that, I think back, okay, that's my adolescent chair popping up. But I'm aware and I, go and I talk to her and apologize. And hopefully I'm not traumatizing her too much. And she's, but anyway, whatever. If she needs therapy, that's fine. Like we all need it. So we all need it. So girls, if you're listening, I'm just doing the best I can with the skills that I have. So I love you. I love you both.
Yes.
They don't usually listen to this. Maybe they will one day, but
honestly, the willingness that you have to go back and repair.
Yeah. That's it.
Because a lot of times it's hindsight.
Yeah.
I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was not my adult. But you don't realize it when you're in the moment because you're so clouded by the emotional reactivity that it's like, oh, okay. So then you kind of go back and say, okay, what led to what? What led to what?
Yeah.
And I truly think like we're going to be learning until the day we die. Like the day that I reach the end or the day that I reach like, oh, I've arrived. I reached the top of the mountain. That's not going to settle for me because I'm going to want to see the next one. It's a constant journey of discovering the self, because I might be all well and good, in dealing with like family relationships or friendships. But when it comes to like dating relationships or professional relationships, I might have other, like triggers come up in different ways.
Sure.
With different people, all of our energy gets funky sometimes.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to put it. We're not professionally, we're not experts all the time at all the things that we have to deal with and get through. I mean, we're not. It's like,
we can't be.
No. And we're humans.
Yeah. We're still human.
we're still human. Yeah.
With our own inner children and inner adolescents. And, like you said about your girls, like you're doing the best you can with the tools you got.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we strive to do. That's the adult chair.
Yeah.
How to be healthy.
So if people are interested in learning more about the adult chair, where would you suggest they go?
Everything can be found on Michelle's website, theadultchair.com. Okay. If they're interested in the workshop, I'm not sure if that's linked directly to our website yet, but it's adultchair.com/Nashville. And I mean, everything about her podcast and the membership, and she has free meditations, a free inner child thing. I mean, I'm like plugging her hardcore right now, but it's all so amazing. And anyone that's interested in learning how to be a healthy adult can probably find something there that will spark their interest.
Awesome. And then if people are interested in learning more about you and working with you,
Mhm.
what's your website?
My website is trueconsciousliving.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not at True Conscious Living. I don't really do much there yet. I'm toying, working my way into the social media
Yeah.
experience, but my website would be the place to go.
Okay.
And they can book a session straight from there. They can learn more about me, my story, more about the adult chair, kind of what my sessions look like, and then my contact information is there also.
Okay. Well, so one thing I want to circle back to is we were talking about like how do you find your clients or how do they find you? And I know that in a lot of the gazillion, are you in a bunch of like 80,000 gazillion Facebook groups for therapists on Facebook?
Yes.
Like, okay. So you've probably seen that post that pops up every other day of like, how do you find clients? Where are you marketing? So I think it's really cool that you don't have much of a social media presence and you don't really care to, from what I gather. Like,
I mean,
totally get that.
I have moments,
Right.
where I'll post like a little story here and there, but like, as far as, people have told me all the time, you need to do a Facebook Live or you need to do, Q&A with, whatever. And it's like, maybe in the future, it's just not where I am right now. And, I don't ever want to do something for my practice that I'm not inspired to do. Because then it just doesn't feel like the energy's not behind it. And, I just kind of put a pin in it and like, maybe that'll circle back around and come back. And maybe one day I will want to do social media, or maybe one day I will want to write a course, but it had like the timing, like that illuminated path, it has to feel right.
Gotcha.
Because otherwise, I mean, I was an elementary school teacher before I became a therapist. And I was like, it just reminds me of lesson planning. Like I don't want to, write a course. It felt like lesson planning to me. So maybe there's some unprocessed trauma around there that I need to work
I gotcha.
through.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean,
yeah. So I'm sorry, your question about marketing and how I find clients. I mean, I'm listed on the Adult Chair's website. I was on Psychology Today for a little bit, but kind of, I just didn't want to continue with that. And really it's word of mouth, and making connections and having, I've been on, now your podcast, Michelle's, another friend of mine has a podcast. And so it's just, and I don't do these things for like, oh yeah, maybe this will help me get clients. It's more of like just getting the message out there of like what's possible. Because I think especially as therapists, we kind of have this tunnel vision of like, this is what, the basics, the CBT, the DBT, the ACT, the trauma informed EMDR, all the acronyms, but there's such a bigger world out there of other tools to use that's my purpose. That's what I want to get out there, is like, whether it's a therapist that wants to grow their practice or grow their skill set, or whether it's a person that is like, wow, I really need to do some personal work. My agenda is never markety. I don't like that energy. I'm not really a business person by trade. Like I said, I never imagined that I would own a business. And so the business side of things is not really my forte. I'm learning.
Sure.
But, it's just making connections, I found, has been the best way to grow your client base.
Yeah.
And, you may have a website, you may have social media might be the best way. You might do a workshop. You might give a talk somewhere about something that you're passionate about. But it's not closing your heart to the opportunities that arise.
Yeah.
Like if my heart closed up last Friday morning, I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Right.
And so it's like, even if you have just a little nudge, it's like, just what's the cost benefit?
Right. Yeah. I always say stay open to possibilities and opportunities. And I mean, really, from the beginning of this podcast, I didn't know. I mean, I had an idea of where I wanted to go with it and what I wanted to do, but just continuing to make connections and to stay open has brought me some amazing opportunities.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have them if I hadn't had this itch to scratch of being creative and starting a podcast. And I just find it like I finally did it. I went after a goal or a dream of having a creative outlet, and here I am, and here you are.
So you have the skills to do it. You've done it before. And so if you're feeling that same itch to do something different,
and
just throwing that out there.
If y'all could see her, she's like like moving her
shimmying my
shoulder,
shoulder,
like
like, yep,
shimmying her
nudge,
shoulder,
nudge.
giving me the virtual nudge over Zoom.
Yeah.
I know.
But it's, I don't know. It's just, I love this work. I love talking about this work. I love doing this work. I don't even consider it a job.
Yeah.
I don't like
That's so
referring
cool.
to it as a job. It's just, it's fun. And it can be painful,
Sure.
walking with people through these things. But I think when you receive, like, I'll get texts from clients like, oh my gosh, I had this awareness, or like I'll meet with them a week, 2 weeks, a month later. And like, I have been thinking about like this since our last session. And this is how it's grown. Cause it's like, you just plant the seed like we do in therapy, but also in coaching, and it just grows. And then you never know. And it's like, okay, we're going this direction. Cool. Let's go there.
Right.
And that's why I kind of got away from doing the more manualized or structured sessions. Cause it's like, it's not up to me. It's up to the client. It's up to divine timing. It's like, what's meant to be is going to happen.
Sure.
And just trusting the process. Like, I'm in the middle of reading Untethered Soul by Michael Singer about heart opening and heart closing. It's very interesting. And I've heard a lot about this book. And so I finally pulled it off the shelf and started reading it. But it speaks a lot to, keeping your heart open to all possibilities, like you said.
Yeah.
And living with your heart open. Yeah. Not to the point of getting stomped on, but just with that curiosity and compassion and willingness. Yeah. Like, we have this one, to quote Glennon Doyle, we have this one wild and precious life. Right. How are we going to spend it?
Right.
So taking the risks.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I just love this conversation, and I'm so glad that we had coffee last Friday.
I know. Can't wait for the next one.
And it's funny because that coffee, I'd never had their coffee before, but I mean, I was so pumped up for like the whole day. I could not stop thinking. I felt like, what do they put in? Like, how much caffeine is in this? I felt so good.
I mean, their coffee is on point. Really Loveland Coffee.
Yes, totally.
Out in Irmo, we'll give them a little plug. But
Loveland Coffee, if you haven't been, you need to go for sure. And it's hard because my brother-in-law, I told you, is a coffee roaster.
Oh yeah.
In Athens, but they don't compete. So Charlie, it's cool. I think he's been to Loveland too when he's been in town, but yeah, that was fun. And I think so if you're local to us, if you're in Columbia, South Carolina, I believe we're going to have another one. I think Eric said he wants to do it like twice a month. And I know that another therapist in the group was going to do an evening one for those who aren't early risers. So yeah, if you're a therapist in Columbia and you haven't joined I think it's called Columbia
Area Therapist
group,
Facebook group.
Yeah. And I encourage, if you live in Raleigh or you live in LA or you live in, I don't know, Florida,
Chicago.
Yeah. Like if you have an opportunity to meet up, go for it. Just intentionally set your mindset that this could open up possibilities and opportunities for you. And if it doesn't the first time, go back another time, because there's going to be a different group of people that, you might jive with. So gosh, Jenny, is there anything else that you want to share before we go?
I don't think so. I mean, I could talk about this forever, like I said, but I don't know. Do you have any other questions or for me?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Well, maybe one more question. Is there anything in the future that you're excited about or that, might be coming up for you?
Well, the adult chair workshop, like I said, and just opportunities through, growing the adult chair and growing my own business within the adult chair model. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot coming up for them that I don't know yet. And I keep being told that things are coming and I have to be patient. And my adolescent chair is not very happy about that.
Right.
So I think there will be things coming up, and I'm very excited about, the possibility of mentoring, coaches are doing supervision for coaches, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's what I'm putting out there. And that's what I'm hoping for, and trusting that I'll find a way, because I love doing the mentoring and saying, like supervision, saying like, give me your client questions and let me help you troubleshoot. And this is a tool that you can use, for this issue. And, just that, again, that connection with people, like that's what I'm most excited about, is the connection with people.
Yeah.
And making more connections for sure.
Well, cool. Well, if you guys want to connect with Jenny, please seek her out. She is awesome, phenomenal. You will just adore her. She's so fun and open and
Flowy.
Flowy. Yes. She'll probably be wearing a flowy cardigan, but that'll be your new saying, right?
Yeah. Naturally.
Hashtag therapist clothes or something like that. I don't know. And there
Flowy
you go. Maybe
therapist.
you could design a whole set of there. Ooh, that's an idea. We could design our own therapy.
I mean, because I was always known too when I worked, in the office for wearing flowy skirts. I was either wearing a flowy skirt or a flowy shirt, and sometimes both. And
it's a lot of flow.
It's a lot of flow. That's where we want to be, is in the flow. Like,
Yes.
I'm just going with the flow of life.
It's a metaphor. It's awesome.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Well, thanks again for coming onto the show. This has been so great. Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.